Okay, Year 12, this is the last strategy for operations, which are global factors. There are four different strategies that a business can employ on a global level in order to improve the operations of the business to achieve cost leadership and goods and service differentiation. These four opportunities that are present for businesses to use are global sourcing, economies of scale, scanning and learning, and research and development. The first one is global sourcing, and we've already looked at this under supply chain management, where a business purchases supplies and services without being constrained by a location. So, purchasing maybe raw materials from a country where those materials are a lot more inexpensive than purchasing them domestically. Global sourcing as an operation strategy is a little different as it involves the sourcing of any business operation that can give the business a cost advantage. So, unlike supply chain management, that was just in regards to the supplies for the business, for the operations process. For global sourcing, under global factors, this is sourcing any business operation that gives the business a cost advantage. It may be outsourcing their marketing, for example, or sourcing a business in another country to do their marketing for them, as it may be cheaper. They may want to focus on what their prime function is. So Nike, for example, focus only on marketing at Nike head office, and they outsource all of their manufacturing because that is not their prime function. They believe that their marketing is what makes them money. So they found a cheaper alternative, and global source a cheaper alternative, and as a result, they have been able to gain cost advantages. There are a number of benefits to global sourcing, obviously cost advantages, access to technologies, advantages of expertise and labour specialisation, so you can find a business that specialises in a particular area, for example, a marketing company that may use or specialise in that area, therefore you don't need to worry about that area of the business. Give you access to other resources, as we've seen in supply chain management. And it has the ability to overextend hours, which means that operating in another country or internationally allows you to continue your operations basically 24 hours a day. The limitations of global sourcing. There are possible relocation of aspects of operations, so you may need to move certain parts of your process overseas, which obviously comes with a number of disadvantages because of lack of control. There would be increased cost of logistics. If you're global sourcing, you're constantly bringing things into the domestic market, that's going to cost you money. Storage and distribution issues. Managing different regulatory conditions between nations. So as we saw in influencers, every country has different legal and government regulations. So if you are operating or global sourcing in another country, as a result, you will need to, your management would have to have an understanding of those conditions. There would also be increasing complexity of overall operations when sourcing from diverse locations, and I'm going to go into those complexities. The first complexity that the business has to be aware of is the risk associated with fluctuations of exchange rates, okay, a financial complexity. So they need to be aware that there is going to be exchange rate fluctuations or interest rate fluctuations, and what is the risk of that as a result of global sourcing. The second complexity is contractual complexities, and this is when you are operating in another country or you're global sourcing from another country, you must be aware of language and cultural variations, regulatory differences, and misunderstanding as a result of poorly negotiated service level agreements. A very, very, very simple example, my uncle manufactures baby furniture in China. As a result, he had to become aware of their cultural expectations. So when he goes there to visit, the management over there will take him out for lunch, dinner, etc., he cannot refuse to eat anything. So it's seen as really rude and disrespectful if he was to refuse something that was offered to him. He obviously had to learn that he's dealing with another company in another country, and he needs to be aware of their cultural variation in order to ensure success and maintain that relationship. There is an article here. You can pause the video and follow the link to the article. I'll just click it for you now to have a look. So it's just the stages of global sourcing and what a business will have to go through in order to global source a particular function of the business. So there are a number of stages here that you can have a look at in your own time. Okay, the next one is economies of scale, and these are the cost advantages that can be gained from producing at a larger scale. So we've looked at this before in operations. This means that the business can lower or is able to lower their input costs as a result of producing at a larger scale. So the economies of scale becomes a global factor when a business decides to sell to global markets. As a result of using economies of scale, cost leadership is usually achieved. So the benefits of economies of scale is as the scale of production increases, the unit per cost falls. As a result, profitability can rise because you're selling the unit for a lot less. Product life cycles are also extended, so that means that there is a greater added value on production. This is where you can gain economies of scale in various aspects of the business when you are on a global scale. So there is clear production advantages in producing high volumes. It can be derived on any capital investment, so maybe a factory unit, and any improved use of technology. You can also gain economies of scale through marketing by having a global brand similar to McDonald's. They have that one brand image that is widely accepted in a number of different nations that they operate in. The Golden Arches, that global brand, is familiar to everybody in a number of different areas, a number of different countries, as well as global advertising. So that can save costs on duplication. Now, McDonald's has moved slightly away from that in some countries as a result of increased awareness of health. It could be that the country, or it may be a religious aspect where they may not eat meat. As a result, their global advertising has had to change. It can be created through human resources as well, so through the application of training and development and a range of HR strategies globally. So this is using the same training and development for a number of different employees in a number of different nations. As a result, you can gain economies of scale by saving costs on that training and development. We're going to watch this clip on economies of scale.
Hey Econ students, this is Jacob Clifford. Welcome to ACDC Econ. What do the Twilight movies, the Harry Potter movies, and the whole Lord of the Rings trilogy have in common? Well, they're all based on books, right? False! They all had economies of scale. Before we jump into it, keep in mind that economists differentiate between the short run and the long run. In the short run, at least one input or resource in the production process is fixed. I made a video about it, check it out. In this video, I'm going to talk about production in the long run, when all resources are variable. Let's start by looking at what happens to output as a company adds more and more resources. If a firm were to double its inputs, there's only three possible things that could happen to their output. Their output could more than double, it could double, or it could less than double. That's the idea of returns to scale. If output more than doubles, then a firm is experiencing increasing returns to scale because getting bigger is better. This happens because they can use mass production techniques that smaller firms can't. Now, if the output doubles, then that company has constant returns to scale. So they've kind of maxed out on the gains of getting bigger. And if that output less than doubles, then they're experiencing decreasing returns to scale, and they're just too big. So returns to scale show what happened to production in the long run. But what happens to costs? Well, have you ever seen the TV show How It's Made? It shows how companies produce stuff, and it's absolutely fascinating. Think of two bread companies, with one producing bread like this, and the other one producing bread like this. Now, here's the question. Which one of these two companies has higher costs? Obviously this one. That's millions of dollars of equipment they're using to produce the bread. So their total costs of producing are way higher. But what about their average cost of producing each loaf of bread? It's way lower, and that's the idea of economies of scale. The long-run average costs fall as more output is produced. Economies of scale is the idea that getting bigger is cheaper. It happens because of increasing returns of scale and other cost-saving measures. Companies that are producing at a larger scale can afford super productive machines and also buy resources in bulk. Again, the total cost might be a lot higher, but the average cost is lower. And that brings us back to those movies. Several of the Twilight and Harry Potter movies and all the Lord of the Rings movies were shot at the same time. The total cost of producing 3 movies is a lot more expensive than just producing one, but if you produce them all at the same time, the average cost is going to fall. When they made the Lord of the Rings, they didn't have to ship their cast and crew to New Zealand over and over and over again. So producing multiple movies all at once meant that they had economies of scale. But often costs don't keep falling and falling in the long run. Like production, they often level off, and this is called constant returns to scale. So when you're producing bread, there's just no way to get your cost below a certain amount per loaf. And eventually it's possible for the average cost to start going up as more is produced. And that's called diseconomies of scale. In that situation, a company becomes so big and is producing so much that they have to hire extra managers, and they have to add a cafeteria to their factory, so their average costs start going up. Now you might be thinking that a firm wants to produce where they have the lowest long-run average cost, but it's not that simple. The amount a firm should produce doesn't just look at cost. It also looks at consumer demand. I mean, think of your local pizza restaurant. The goal isn't to minimize their costs, make as much pizza as possible. Their goal is to maximize profit. Think about it. They could have advanced pizza-making robots that do all the work, but they don't sell enough pizza to make it worth it. The point is, concepts like economies of scale are ideas that help producers make decisions. They don't tell producers exactly how much to make, because in real life, one size doesn't fit all. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Hey, thanks for watching my econ videos. Please like and leave a comment if you want.
Okay, the next global factor is scanning and learning. Now, scanning and learning is basically looking at what the global environment is doing in businesses in other nations and learning from the best practice around the world. So you're basically coming back with ideas and understanding on how you can implement that into your own business. So a business domestically can learn on a global scale from management journals, industry and business associations, conferences and forums that they may attend, and staff members and managers that they may already have who have worked in a business in another nation. The more diversity that you have in your business, the more scanning and learning you have conducted, it will help the business to learn how to handle any issue that they are faced with flexibility and insight, because they are open to the opportunity of learning. You've got a snapshot of a business here, David Jones, and how they use scanning and learning. So, as you're aware, David Jones is an Australian department store, and they compare itself with other large department stores around the world. They have done this by focusing on best practice to lead in the regional and domestic market. So they have watched and learned from stores like Nordstrom, Macy's, JCPenney, who lead the market either domestically or globally in terms of their investment in e-commerce. And David Jones has gained from this. So they've scanned the global market to learn from the success of this business. David Jones also scans the Facebook pages and uses social media by competitors to seek the number of likes, shares, and retweets that their communications enjoys. So they will look at Macy's Facebook page, for example, gain insight into what is being retweeted, what is being liked. That way they can implement some of those similar strategies in their operations and in their marketing. The final one is research and development. So this helps a business create leading edge technologies and to create innovative products and solutions. So accessing research and development from other nations to improve your product. So this can achieve both cost leadership and goods and service differentiation. Governments usually encourage R&D and they would offer a taxation incentive and grants. The reason why the Australian government would do this is because they want you to learn from countries that have best practice or that have the best technologies or produce the best products or services and bring them back to Australia and produce those through Australian businesses in order to improve the Australian economy. The grants can assist businesses invest and allocate resources into R&D. So the grant is usually a sum of money that they can then use for research and development. A central aspect of research and development is making sure that you're finding out what the consumer wants and needs in order to produce that product. Okay, you now have this question to answer based on the PowerPoint, the videos and the article. The question is an analyze question. You need to draw out the implications of two global factors. So what are, for example, the implications of using global sourcing and scanning and learning in improving the business operations? You can also show how it may limit the improvement of business operations to take your answer a little bit further. You need to type the answer. It doesn't matter which two global factors you choose to do. The doc has been uploaded with this video on the Google Classroom. You need to type approximately 10 to 12 lines and it needs to be submitted by midnight tonight. If you have any questions, please email me. We will go over aspects of this tomorrow based on your answers that you submit tonight.